Wasserman joins us right at The Athletic, covers college football. And Ari, it wasn't necessarily the headline-grabbing opening weekend that we've had some years, but there were some pockets of really entertaining football, whether you're talking TCU, Colorado, or we thought it was going to be North Carolina, South Carolina. That one kind of disappointed a little bit, but boy, Wyoming, Texas Tech filled in, and then we got a little bit of drama the last couple of nights. What's the grade that you give Week 1?
I think it's a pretty solid B+, I would think. Now, there might not have been the crazy upsets out there. I mean, although you could probably count Duke beating Clemson as that. But I thought it was a pretty revelatory weekend. For instance, I think Florida State kind of emerged as a team that needs to be taken seriously as a national contender already. To me, I was watching that game and the athletes that they have on that team and the way they were flying to the football, it's like, okay, well, they were a trendy preseason pick to be pretty good, but, I think we kind of saw right out of the gate that they are very, very good, and, especially coupled with Clemson losing, that's a team that's probably got a pretty nice inside track to the college football playoff this year. Learning that alone, I think, in Week 1 in a game that the entire country was watching is a pretty exciting thing, and of course, Colorado, is a very interesting program, and I believe that a 59-0 loss, in my mind, was on the table to TCU. I thought that there was a chance that their lines wouldn't be competitive, and we'd get to a point where the hype met the television, and that the hype would lose out, and they go out and beat TCU as a 20.5-point underdog, and go, hey, you know what? They might have the best player in college football on their roster. I think that if you kind of look around the scoreboard a little bit, it might not be as exciting on paper, but I thought that there was a lot of answers that we got that, the questions that we had been asking all summer.
Ari, 2 years ago, if I had made the statement that I'm going to make to you next, you would have talked to Michael Borky before you hung up and said he really should be checked into a facility. But I look at Florida State right now and I say, show me one spot on the roster, one position group where there's a glaring weakness. And I'm not sure that I see it. And I look at Clemson's roster right now and I say, show me one spot where there is a glaring bright spot. And I'm not sure that I see that either.
Yeah, a lot can change in a few years. I think that we've learned that the transfer portal kind of neutralizes those types of holes, Not too long ago, you actually needed to recruit good classes and top-level players to, address a hole on your roster. And in order to do that, it might be a 2 or 3 year building process. But now you can go out and get a first-round draft pick in the portal, plug that person in right away, and they're very good, And I think that it's really interesting that you just brought those two teams up, because it also kind of highlights the number one concern that I would have if I were a Clemson fan, which is Dabo Swinney's inability or refusal, I guess, to embrace the transfer portal. And, you have a team that now is one of the best teams in the country in Florida State that has embraced it quite a bit. And Clemson's on the wrong side of that matchup right now. And when you think about all the receivers that were available in the transfer portal, Keon Coleman, a player now that it's on Florida State's roster that Clemson's going to have to defend here in a few weeks. But Dorian Singer, the list goes on. There's a lot of very good players at that position that were available that Clemson didn't recruit because they don't do that. So to me, I almost feel like it's coaching malpractice in 2022 or 2023 or 2024, ever since this began, to not embrace that and to utilize that to plug and fill holes in your roster. If you're Dabo Swinney and you have a program that has been a perennial contender for the past, 5 to 8 years, and you see that you don't have a game-breaking receiver on your roster, why are you not addressing that by trying to see what's available in the portal? It kind of blows my mind a little bit. It's almost malpractice to me.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring up Keon Coleman. We're sitting here in Mississippi, and Ole Miss was not in it for Keon Coleman at all. But they worked like heck, and it came down to Florida State and Ole Miss at the very end. And, Florida State ultimately is where he wanted to go, and there was a good NIL deal in place. But, a program like Ole Miss who has embraced the transfer portal was like, wait, there's a difference maker at receiver. Let's do everything we can to get him. So my question about Dabo and Clemson is it the transfer portal or is it NIL? that they are not embracing, or have those things become one and the same?
Yeah, maybe it's one and the same. I guess there's a certain type of player that Dabo Swinney has found to be attractive for his roster. And I think that player is a class first, team first, religious kid in some cases who doesn't prioritize, other things besides being the best version of that person as a football player that they can be, while also remaining committed to that program. And I think that there is this certain thought process that people who don't prioritize NIL are more likely to be, positive fixtures on your roster, and people who care about money and NIL might have a higher likelihood of causing you problems, and I think part of that is a result of just the way that people talked about young men who played college football for the past 50 years. And part of that is just, us being brainwashed by the NCAA that people who prioritize their income, or at least consider their income, goods for service, payment for a service, as bad people. And, I look at myself and the way that I live my life. I'm assuming that you do the same. It's America. Society is driven by compensation, and our career goals and aspirations and moves that we make as professionals in this industry are predicated based on compensation and fit. So I don't understand why young athletes who are playing college football, who are Division I players, and especially Power 5 players, who I think you could already make the case for the top 1% of their field, should be victimized, or not victimized, but viewed poorly, or villainized is the word I was looking for prioritizing the most that they can make off of their name, image, and likeness. It's part of the game.
You know what? Even if compensation is not... No, I was just going to say, I love where you're going with that. Even if compensation is not the number one thing for me, maybe it's quality of life based on where I live. But compensation is part of the equation. Like, I can't afford to live where I want to live if I'm not paid enough. It has to be part of the decision.
Yeah, of course. It's in anything. I'm not saying that I would just blindly take any job that came after me because they pay more than my current one. But you have to take those things into account. And if you're down to Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Miami, and one of those three schools, if they're even, offers you more money on top of it to sweeten the pot, or you find one of those cities more desirable to live in, or whatever drives you, because we're all driven by different things, that doesn't mean that you can't be dedicated to football or dedicated to your team or the program that you're involved with. It means that you're doing the best that you can to situate yourself in a better position as a result of your skill set. And I think that it's going to take some years before we can just reverse the trance that we were all in for such a long time, that pay for play is bad and kids who take handouts are terrible people. And, and the funniest thing about it is if you go and you look into the NFL, and I know a lot of people who have played this game professionally now who are willing to speak openly about their recruitment, all those players, or a lot of those players that you thought were the program first, were taking money anyway.
Of course they were.
So the whole thing's been a scam, and I'm not saying that Dabo isn't taking transfers only because he doesn't want to pay for them. If you don't want to go pay for transfers, or you feel like money shouldn't be the deciding force to why a player comes to your program, I understand that. There are certain type of people who just have their hands out and aren't focused on anything other than being paid. And if that's not the temperament that you're looking for, I'm not criticizing him for that. But what I am criticizing him for is being the CEO of a major company and program in 2023 and not embracing an aspect of the game that could be live or die for his team. And you might think, hey, this is a good coach who only wants a certain type of kid in there, but he's doing his entire roster a disservice by not putting the best players on the field or fielding the best possible team as a result. And now he might feel good about the players that he has on the roster who aren't worried about money, but now they've got a big fat loss to Duke on their resume. And it's just, I think that if you really go down the rabbit hole here, there's a larger discussion to be made of why don't you want these kids to be paid? Why are you against it? And what are you going to do as a coach who also makes millions of dollars a year to address your job and field a better team as a result of this? Like, it's a huge deal.
Certainly is. All right.